Welcome, everyone, to the Bulletin podcast. I'm Charina Garcia, your podcast host. I am the Strategy and Innovation Partner here at WR Immigration. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been co-hosting the Chatting with Charlies for the past year, and we've moved to this new platform using LinkedIn Live, and then what we call the Bulletin podcast. And so with me today, I have Charlie Oppenheim. Charlie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Charlie Oppenheim. I was chief of the Immigrant Visa Control and Reporting Division for over 23 years before my retirement. I'm now with WR Consulting as the government relations consultant.
Okay. So just a legal disclaimer again, any questions that you may have or you need legal advice, please reach out to WR Immigration and we're happy to answer them for you. So Charlie, let's talk about the March Visa Bulletin. We saw from the USCIS that they're holding Chart B. So what's going on there? Can you give us a little bit of explanation about that?
Sure. What the Immigration Service does is they will look at the annual limit. For example, this year, the annual limit's $161,000. On a monthly basis, they would compare that limit versus how many numbers have already been used, how many numbers they think will be used during the current month, and what that balance is. For example, the 161,000 limit, if 50,000 numbers have already been used, and then they think an additional 11,000 will be used during the month of February, they would say, okay, there's 100,000 numbers remaining that can be used March through September. If they determine that they already have enough filings based on Chart B to use those 100,000 numbers, then they will shut off Chart B and only allow the Chart A dates to be used from that point forward.
Okay, so Department of State is holding Chart B, right? But USCIS is saying you cannot use Chart B to file your AOS. You must use Chart A, which is the final action date.
Correct. And the State Department will use, once the Chart B dates are announced, the State Department will continue to use those. The reason USCIS will make a determination of whether to use allow the Chart B dates to be used or not, is because those confer benefits. So they may want to stop conferring benefits at a certain point, whereas the State Department's continuing to use them. There are no benefits derived from that.
Okay, so for the month of February, you can use Chart B to file your adjustment of status applications with USCIS. Beginning on March 1, you can no longer use Chart B to file your adjustment of status applications. You must use Chart A, which is the final action date, correct?
Correct. And that's why it's very important for applicants to act in a very timely manner whenever they see the availability of filings under Chart B to do so, because you never know when USCIS will make that determination to stop using Chart B. This year, we were lucky. They waited until March. Some years they've done it in January or February. So you need to act very quickly when you can.
I think if you want to benchmark and be proactive, then you would actually start getting those. Look at your perm filings. Look at those I-140s that could be coming down the pipeline, and then filing those AOSs so you can determine and anticipate that if the Chart B is going to close for February or March Visa Bulletin, then you can at least have the employees ready with their birth certificate, marriage certificate, all of that stuff. So that's kind of the moral of the story, right, Charlie? When
yes,
Chart
it
B
is.
closes early. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the final action trend for employment base. So for EB1, all chargeability countries still continues to be current for March, right?
Yes.
We only saw a slowdown or a cutoff date in August 2023 and September 2023, but that was towards the end of the fiscal year, right?
Right. And those were to limit number use. because they were running out of numbers versus the annual limit.
And do you think that will be the same this coming August, September, or too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell, but historically, if there were going to be the imposition of a rest of world date, in the first preference, it would normally be held off as late as possible, possibly in August or September. The reason being then that would negatively impact people for the least amount of time prior to the new annual limit becoming available October 1st.
Okay. And then for EB2, all chargeability rest of world, it's staying the same at November. Oh, no, it moved a little bit. It went from November 15, 2022 to November 22, 2022. So moved up about a week.
Yeah, and I think that we can continue to see, up to 2 weeks of movement going forward in the next several months.
Okay. And then EB3, all chargeability rest of world, saw a little bit of a jump of 7 days. So September 1, 2022 to September 8, 2022.
Right. And again, I think we can see movement of that date up to 3 weeks. We'll soon be entering in the second half of the year. So state may decide to start advancing some dates at a little bit faster pace for a period of several months.
Okay. All right. And then now let's look at the final action trend for China. So for EB1, we saw about a 2-week movement. It was at July 1, 2022. And in March, it moved up to July 15, 2022. So is that aligned with your predictions as well?
Pretty much. I had predicted that up to 1 month movement on average between, March and the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. And then now we're seeing for EB2, China, no movement. So January 1, 2020, holding the same at January 1, 2020 for March 2024. And then for EB3, February, it's showing September 1, 2020. And then in March, it's September 1, 2020 also.
Right. I think for China, second and third preference categories, I think they established a date at the beginning of the second quarter, which would have been February. I think they established dates for the China second, third, EW, and even the fifth preference unreserved categories at a point they felt they could hold the date throughout the next 3 months, and doing so would allow the required amount of numbers to be used. I would expect some movement for April, though.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and see in April. And then for India, right, EB1 moved a little bit, a month, from September 1, 2020 to October 1, 2020. Aligned with your predictions as well, or a surprise?
No, this is pretty much it. It was actually one week more than I had predicted. I think that we will see some, continued recovery in the employment first preference because the date was current through December of fiscal 2023. And then for a period of time, it was in the calendar year 2022. So I think we could see some slow movement in the India EB1 category.
Okay, and then EB2 in January, March 1, 2012, and then is staying at March 1, 2012 in February and also in March.
Yeah, so I think that for both the EB2 and EB3 categories, the movement is going to be very slow. As with China, the India preference categories are subject to the per country limits. Historically, India second and third have relied on otherwise unused numbers under the worldwide annual limit. Right now, there are worldwide second and third preference final action dates, meaning there are no otherwise unused numbers. So China and India are in the second and third preference are strictly subject to their per country limit, which is approximately 3,200 numbers. And that will severely limit advancement of the final action dates this fiscal year.
Okay. That's the same for EB3, right? Because
Same for EB3.
Yeah.
I think that EB3 up to 1 week per month average now through September. But we will need to monitor this. I believe that if there are going to be any movements, they could occur in the April through June timeframe, because they will want to move the dates earlier in the second half so that they will maximize time to get cases processed.
Okay, so for EB3 and EB2 for India and China, we see later dates for EB3. So is it still going to be the same? That EB3 is going to be a little bit faster than EB2?
I think that it's hard to say, because often applicants will have looked at those dates and decide that they may want to downgrade from employment second to third. And in some instances, we've seen where the second date is more advantageous and people that are eligible can upgrade. So it's kind of hard to say right now, but I in both categories, I do not expect rapid advancements of the dates. You should kind of plan on the worst and be pleasantly surprised if my predicted movements are underrepresenting what actually occurs. I would rather people, be very happy with my movements being exceeded versus giving people potentially false hopes.
Okay, and that brings us to your predictions for the employment-based final action date movement. Again, these predictions are estimated average monthly movement through September 2024, and is the availability of unused family-sponsored numbers could also increase the predicted movement. So what is your prediction, Charlie, for EB1? All chargeability, will it remain current?
Yes, all chargeabilities I anticipated remaining current through the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, how about for China?
For China, I think the category, it will move up to 1 month per month, and for India, up to 3 weeks per month.
Okay, and then for EB2, all chargeability?
EB2, I would expect worldwide up to 2 weeks. For China, up to 3 weeks. And for India, employment second, up to 2 weeks.
Okay, and how about EB3?
For EB3, I think that worldwide up to 3 weeks, China up to 6 weeks, and India third preference up to 1 week.
Okay. And then when do your predictions usually start being no movement? Is it towards the end of the fiscal year?
Typically, to where you could be more concerned with date movement in the third or the fourth quarter, which starts in July. Typically, You start running out of numbers. When I was chief, I always tried to advance the final action dates so that we could maximize number use in the October through June timeframe. The reason being, you would be better off kind of slowing things at the last part of the fiscal year when people are doing other things. Overseas posts have a lot of transfer staff, so they aren't able to process as many cases in the summer months. And USCIS may often have people taking more annual leave during these summer months. So again, you don't want to run into the end of the year with a large amount of numbers that you need to use. So you're better off using them in the first 9 months of the fiscal year.
So, Charlie, for the family-sponsored dates for filing, do you expect to see any movement there?
I don't expect any great movement there. If we were lucky, there will be some family-sponsored final action or application filing dates, but I would not expect anything great.
Okay, and then if we move to the final action date for family-sponsored, we will see some movement.
For the family-sponsored final action dates, we will see some steady forward movement.
Okay, so if we look at the family-sponsored final action dates, for family base first preference. What is that looking like? Was there any movement?
There was 1 week movement in the final action date, rest of world, for first preference. A nice jump in the F2A date, as well as the 2B, third and fourth preference dates. So all of the family-sponsored final action dates did advance at a nice pace, and I think they will continue to steadily advance.
But for Mexico and Philippines, first preference and F2B and F3, they stayed the same.
Yeah. Mexico and Philippines have large amounts of pending demand with large concentrations of demand in the various weekly groupings and monthly groupings. So movement of those dates can be much more limited. Also, that processing is primarily concentrated at Ciudad Juarez for the Mexican and Manila for the Philippine. And so that staffing implications and workload capacity can have a bigger impact on movement of those dates.